of Portland Bill.
This is my lighthouse on the Guillemot Rock, and here are my assistants, Ross and Cromarty, busy cleaning and polishing. You know, said Cromarty, I think I'd better give my new fishing rod a polish. I must keep it spick and span. Now, ain't it funny how a small thing like that can start an argument? Ross began to tease Cromarty.
You'll never catch anything with that. It's got too many gadgets on it.
What do you mean? This is high technology. Every one of these gadgets has a use, you know. Well, for example, this rings when the hook's in the water, and this buzzes when it's out. That way, you know exactly where your hook is.
Yes, and so do the fish.
And with that, Ross picked up his picture of Captain Biscay.
Now, here's a real fisherman. Just look at the size of that fish.
Oh, it's just a shrimp. You should have seen the one I caught on holiday. It must have been this big. Now, it was at that point that I came in. Oh, dear. Now, what's the matter? You're supposed to be polishing, not arguing. I was just telling Ross about the time I caught a fish this big. Exaggerated, Cromarty. A salmon it was. This big.
Oh, come off it, Cromarty. You couldn't catch a cold in a thunderstorm. Now, I caught a herring off this very lock last week that was, easily this big.
Oh, yes, said I. I don't think I saw that one.
No, I don't think you did,
bluffed Ross.
It was too big to get in the pan, so I threw it back in the sea. But it was easily this big.
Oh, it was it? Well, mine was this big. I couldn't stand any more. You two, always bickering over something or other. The only way to stop this argument is to hold a fishing match. We'll see who can catch the biggest fish for tea. Well, that suits me fine, said Cromarty. I'll get the rest of my gear. I'll probably catch a whale.
Look at King Neptune there.
Ah, you can laugh, Ross. But you'll see. You won't catch a thing with that twig and a bent pin. And still bickering, they went off to their favourite places on the rock. Well, by now, I'd had enough of their arguing, and I decided that the fishing competition had to end in a draw. And for that, I had an idea. When I was out of their sight, I caught hold of both their fishing lines and tied them together. Then I gave Ross's line a tug.
I've got one!
Cried Ross, pulling hard and, of course, tugging Cromarty at the same time. Me too, he shouted.
Mine's bigger.
Now, after watching them puffing and pulling against each other for about 10 minutes, I decided that enough were enough. So I cut the lines, and they both fell back with a bump.
Suffering swordfish,
Gasped Ross.
I'm glad that's over. My fish nearly pulled me into the sea.
Aye, and mine broke my line. Well, perhaps you'd better try for smaller fish from now on, I cried. But Cromarty was worried. We've caught nothing but tea, and I'm hungry. Don't worry, I caught a tin of baked beans.
Makes you hungry, this fishing lark. I could eat another tin of baked beans,
said Ross. Oh, well, that's nothing. I could eat another 2 tins, said Cromarty. And a jam sandwich. Blistering barnacles, they were at it again. Come on, you two. There's too much polishing to be done to hold an eating match.
I'll polish the brasswork until it shines like a new pin,
smiled Ross. Mine will shine like 2 new pins, boasted Cromarty. Now, that was one argument I didn't mind them having. There's always something happening on the Guillemot Rock.
We're polishing and cleaning everything we can, till all the brass is gleaming and the rooms are spick and span. Scrub, dust, polish and rub with cleaning cloth and water tub. Splish, splosh, mopping the floor with puddles and bubbles all over the floor.
Which fish gets the most applause? Oh, I don't know. Which fish does get the most applause? A starfish.
Da dum ba doo 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 dum. Da dum ba da dum dum de dum de dum. Scrub, dust, polish and rub with cleaning cloth and water tub. Splish, splosh, mopping the floor with puddles and bubbles all over the floor. We've polished and we've cleaned up everything we can. Now all the brass is gleaming and the rooms are spick and span. Oh, the rooms are spick and span.
Tell us another story, Bill.
I was in the service room working on my maps and charts. I was trying to forecast the weather for the next few days, when in came Cromarty carrying a cup of tea. Hi there, Bill. Have you got time for a cup of tea? Well, I thought I'd have a bit of fun with him, so I went over to the window and lifted up some seaweed that was hanging there, pretended to study it, and I said, "Suffering swordfish, it's 11:15. Yes, I'd love a cup." Cromarty had fallen for it. He thought I'd told the time by the seaweed. Oh, how did he do that? He told the time by feeling that piece of seaweed. You can't do that, can you? He was so amazed, he must have put at least 18 sugars in my tea. I think I'll just take Ross a cuppa. He's downstairs in the engine room. Ross had just finished servicing the generator.
Oh, a copper. Just what I needed.
He said.
Oh, thanks, Cromarty.
Now, Ross, you know a bit about machinery, clocks and things. Now tell me, how do you tell the time with a bit of seaweed?
Seaweed? You feeling all right, Cromarty? Not banged your head on anything lately, eh? Not been at those brandy balls in the medicine chest again, eh?
No, I haven't. I'm being serious. When Cromarty told Ross how he'd seen me tell the time with a bit of seaweed, Ross decided he had to see it for himself.
Cromarty, what time is it?
Oh, I don't know what time it is, Ross. It might be early, it might be late. In fact, I've no idea what time it is at all. Time? I said. Oh, I can tell you that. And I went to the seaweed again. It's 5 to 11, I told them. Ross looked at Cromarty. Cromarty looked at Ross. Time to check the light, I said, and left him alone to see what would happen. And sure enough, as soon as I'd gone, they both went over to the seaweed. Oh, let's have a go. Cromarty was very excited. He lifted the seaweed down from its hook. Ugh, it's all slimy and bumpy.
Perhaps you tell the time from those bumps,
suggested Ross. Ah, yes. And Cromarty started to count the bumps. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Well, what's the time, Cromarty?
I make it 82 past 103. That can't be right. He threw the seaweed on the floor in disgust and started arguing whether or not it could be digital seaweed. This is where I came back in. What's the time? I asked them. Oh, Bill, time we put the seaweed back. But Cromarty slipped on the seaweed and landed with a bump on the floor. Whatever are you doing? Well, if you must know, Bill, is that bloomin' seaweed of yours. We just can't figure out how you tell the time with it. Well, I had to tell him. Bless my whalebone corset. I can't tell the time by seaweed either. I was only lifting it out of the way so I could see the church clock in McGillicuddy. Oh, so you don't tell the time by the seaweed? No, lad. I'm afraid I don't, I laughed.
What time do you make it, Cromarty?
Asked Ross. Time I went on watch.
Oh, come with me to the rolling sea while the weather's calm and still, and we'll have some fun and laughter with the adventures of Portland Bill.